And so the same thing is happening with the Internet of Things. We need to start paying attention with what are we installing all the way along the way. I need to read every step along the way now. And so we need to understand how many devices am I really, because each device that I connect to the internet is another vector of infection to my home network.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. Today our special guest is Information Security Specialist Matthew Perry. He's been in industry for over 20 years. He's certified with a CISSP certification. As we've usually talked on our channel about physical security and preparedness of the vital needs for our families, we haven't focused sufficiently on how we also protect our identities of our family, our critical family's information, and keep ourselves safe in this increasingly online and connected world. Welcome today, Matthew Perry. Thank you, Matthew, for being here.
Thank you.
Now, a lot of the folks on our channel are interested in increasing the resilience and the preparedness of their families for potential threats or risks that might upset their livelihood or their family's well-being. And a lot of that is focused around the kinds of things that people need on an everyday basis and always have and always will in terms of food and water and shelter and that sort of thing, be able to make real money for financial, taking care of their family's needs. Our world is increasingly dependent on the information about our lives. And we'd like you to talk with us about some helpful tips to help people be able to keep their families safe. And so if we could just walk through some of those guidelines that you're giving expert advice to the audiences that you speak to. What specific steps should a family take to safeguard their identities online, with identity theft being an increasingly serious problem?
Yeah, it is, right? And so that's a good point. The issue is that's such a broad topic, it's such a range, and it depends specifically on the generation as well. And how do you do that? Somebody like you and I, where we might sit there, have a more cautious approach online. We're not as maybe, though we work in the IT industry or familiar with computers, we may not be out there as somebody, as our kids may be in a generation where social sites such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter are part of their everyday life, right? So while we're taking steps at our level to protect our identities, our financial information, our family's information, our kids could just be putting it out there without our knowledge, right? So it really depends on the level of security you're looking to use, because in over time I've learned that there's no such thing as perfect secrecy. There's no such thing as perfect privacy. So what we're all really trying to do is just make sure that what we're trying to accomplish is not become victims of opportunity, if you will, right? So being that by where we may not necessarily be personally targeted, but by happenstance of some sort of breach, our personal privacy has been thereby breached, right? So we're trying to minimize that. And also what we're trying to do is ensure that in the event that we become part of a breach, a whole breach in our information or our privacy, our credit data, whatever becomes breached, how do we minimize, how do we mitigate the actions of the outcome of that?
Yeah, I mean, the frequency of this is just going out of control. I mean, It used to be we would hear about high-profile things maybe once a year or something like that. Now it seems almost weekly that there's been some other major retailer or something that's had their security hacked.
Right. So in that said, a lot depends on what we call risk appetite. Anybody in the security industry or anybody like that, anywhere really that deals in risk, financial risk, whatever, you have a risk, you have a certain risk appetite. And that's for each person and family to identify on their own. But the basics that surround that is understanding what risks are and understanding that now, as you mentioned in the opening, that we're increasingly online. I mean, you even to download a simple tech white paper requires you to at least enter an email address, right? You can't get it because they want to mail it to you. So simple things, besides your banking, bill paying, E-Trade or some sort of stock trading online, to get a flight, to get hotels, to book for vacations, all this requires you to get online and enter information. So how are you doing that when you're just out there putting your information online? And there's some steps that you have people take, all right, that goes with that. Some of the general things that you do, that we do is don't associate your email address with any personal information, that you might have. And again, it depends on the level of privacy that you want. From like me, my name's Matthew Perry. M. Perry is a common when any organization we go to. Matt Perry, whatever, it goes with that. But when you're using it for personal information, it's recommended that you use nothing that associates you personally. You'd use dog name or something, whatever, a nickname or something that doesn't put Matt or your name out there, right? So,
are you meaning not to embed your name in your email address?
That's exactly what I mean, right? So if you're using a Yahoo or a Google or some free web or that, I would keep your name or personal information, right? And that's one of the steps you can use in doing that, as well as when you're entering when you're going to a site, and it requires user authentication and identification. Hey, enter your username here, enter your password. You need to make sure that it's HTTPS, right? That means the website's secured. If you look up in the upper left-hand corner of the toolbar, if it's HTTP and you're entering information, we've instructed our family, don't enter it at all. I don't care what the site is.
So if the site doesn't have an S at the end of the HTTP, it means it's unencrypted and unprotected?
Correct.
So the information you enter could be potentially intercepted and viewed by other parties along the way, for example.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've gotten to a point that we've just made that a practice in our home. I don't care because kids will fight everything. Like, I just want to register for this. Or I want to see this, or I want to get on that site. No, that's not what we do. Right. We enter HTTPS and then we enter whatever information is required. Right. So another one we do is separate your username. So the problem that you get in today's world is it requires you a log on for everything. So now it's becoming a nonsense. How many user IDs and how many passwords do I have to have? But they're necessary, right? If I'm one that's going to use trading online for stocks or whatever, or I'm going to use banking or bill paying, I would certainly not use those same IDs and passwords that I would use for common sites that I would register for flight information, that I would register maybe if I'm LinkedIn or Twitter or things of those nature. I definitely would separate those out, right, due to the sensitivity. So using separate IDs, definitely different passwords. And I know that becomes more cumbersome because of how many passwords do I have to remember, how many user IDs do I have to remember, and that's, again, it's all about your risk appetite. How much are you looking to protect? There's different ways, and we could have a separate topic on how do I protect all those user IDs. And there's applications for mobile devices. There's applications on computers, even on down to Excel. I know when I first started out and had all these passwords and user IDs, I used an Excel spreadsheet that was password protected that sat on an encrypted part of my hard drive on a machine that never left my house. Right, so that I could always log into that one. I knew it was always there. It was my machine. My wife and I only accessed it, and all our passwords and IDs were installed on that one.
All right. So in addition to that, other techniques when a lot of us having internet connections at home, is there anything that we should do in terms of making sure that our basic internet configuration in our households? People on this channel, we're concerned about the kind of locks we have on our doors, the kind of physical security. Well, what kind of security measures should we put that are in place as part of the very configuration of our internet connection at home?
Absolutely. So if you're going to be, it depends on, again, the level of risk, right? You can go all the way from hardwiring everything, which nobody's doing that really anymore, right? Because that eliminates your mobile devices unless you're going to use your carriers.
So there's where you actually would run network wiring throughout the house and have Ethernet plugins rather than having a wireless router.
Sure,
okay.
Sure. And that way you're not broadcasting any sort of SSID outside and nobody has a chance of connecting to your wireless. Again, that seems on the line of impractical. People aren't doing that. So you get really good routers today. The wireless access points are really solid. They come with firewall security functionality enabled. And again, in our house, what we did, I had 3 kids raised in my house who wanted to be, they were active online with different accounts. And so when they have friends come over, right? And friends, what's the first thing they always ask? What's your password? How do I get onto your Wi-Fi? Because mom and dad don't want me using their data plan, right? So get on your friend's Wi-Fi and things of that nature.
And for those of you on the audience, Matt's showing thumb actions here, like his friends are the children's friends are holding mobile devices. Here.
Right. So what we did is we get a Wi-Fi. Originally, before they would have, now routers come with guest access inherently built into them. Before, we used to have to daisy chain a router, and you'd have 2 access points in your house, one for your family and one for kids and things that would come over that would put on it. Now you get a Wi-Fi, you get a wireless access point that has it inherently built into that, and so that's absolutely a good one. So then what you do then is you have your network, whatever your main one is, and then you connect to only those devices that you want and you trust on your home network on that. So that'd be my device, my wife's computer, a couple of our other ones that we're going to do in the house, and then everybody else has to connect to the wireless. We do disable all SSIDs. We don't broadcast them, and we don't disable the SSIDs. We disable the broadcasting of the SSIDs so that when you drive by the house, there's no chance for there's little opportunity for my Wi-Fi just hanging out there and go, oh, with that. If you're going to broadcast your SSID, I would obviously not make it associated with your name. Anything that's associated with you, give it a name, whatever, something out there that don't make it enticing. Don't put FBI watch point, and then just kind of draw attention to. Just make it something that's just innocuous, right? That people don't really care. They're going to go by it if you're going to broadcast it. Absolutely use encryption. WPA2 is the right now the best standard you can use. Always use encryption on that. We have a guest wireless network in our house that we use. We change the password on it every 60 days or so. Not overly too much, but we do change the password on it because kids come and go. And, just to protect myself legally, what people are going to do on my network, I want to make sure, that when kids are gone, they don't come by in their cars or bikes or whatever and latch back onto your network and change that. So they have firewall functions in there, access controls. Now you can do, I can filter by what device can connect to my network at what time of day. So if you have a kid's device, kids are coming by your house and they're going to get on your network, you can take their device and say, well, I know you're not going to spend the night here, Timmy, so you can only connect to my network from after school, 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night, and after that, your device will never connect to my network. So that mitigates the rest. There's a lot of things you can do to help protect your home network and help protect you not only privacy but legally as well, so that some things aren't being done from your network that you may be concerned about.
Now, in addition to that, for the activity that you do online and your family members do, and like online shopping and that sort of thing, what techniques do you recommend to increase your privacy or not anonymity, so that
Sure.
purchases you make or whatever aren't necessarily that if there was some breach or something that it reduces the exposure or the risk to your finances or your.
So that's tough to do, right? So it depends on where you're shopping and what you do, different things, right? So there are different steps that we try to take along the way. So there's a progression of shopping. And my wife's just kind of gotten used to it now. At first, it was kind of a, I've got to go through
burdensome until you get used to these
absolutely
safety
right.
measures.
She's now more on board with it, right? Because as you mentioned in the early on, there's a breach almost every day. You can turn on the news and there's some sort of breach going on every day. So what we do is I do have what's called a VPN anonymizer that I use on my machine. Right, and so what it does is I connect to this VPN anonymizer, and it takes my IP address that's coming from there, and I've got a myriad of IP addresses that it connects me to from across the world. So each time I log in, it looks like I'm logging in from somewhere else, from anywhere from Sweden to Colorado to Hawaii to Chile, wherever. We can use a VPN anonymizer, so it's not the same one. It runs locally on your machine. You connect it. It's a VPN, so as you would for any work or anything like that, it's perfect for traveling. Actually, if you're in an airport, because it's encrypted, you're not using their Wi-Fi. It's encrypted data from the VPN and so on. We did use that for a while. The problem with that is it's not completely secure. So a lot of anonymizers, if you want to use them, to pay. They want a credit card, and they want a non-free based email address. So to pay is not a problem. You can use a generic Visa card. You can go to the local store, gas station, and buy a $100 Visa card with cash.
With cash, right.
With cash, right. And use that. A lot of them will accept that, but they want your email address to be non-free, right? They don't want to accept at Yahoo, at Gmail, at Hotmail. They want at your work domain address, or they want something at a domain that's not a free. Don't know why. I don't know if there's legal implications around that they have to use, that they require that. There are ways around that. You just have to work them. If you know the right people that can get you an email address like that, you can be pretty much anonymous on that. Of course, there's no such thing as perfect privacy, perfect anonymity. The FBI has shown that to be true, as with a number of busts on the Tor network. But for relative assurity, that's pretty good. So we do use a VPN anonymizer in our house. We use vanilla cards when possible. Now the problem you get in, I call them vanilla visas. They're generic cards. They're bland. We go to whatever store and we purchase them with cash. I even sometimes, if I'm feeling different, super.
You're talking about like Visa gift cards?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. You get them $100, $250, $500 gift cards, things like that. We try to use them online. Not all sites will accept them, so you run into that issue. Not all sites accept them. And the biggest problem we run into with those is when they go to validate the card, they want a shipping address. They want to match the card to the address. And if you don't have one, then certain sites won't accept them. And you have to use a regular bank-issued credit card. So that's a secondary plan we use, right? So we have one specific credit card that we use only online purchases. That's it, right? So and it's actually kind of changed now that more and more point of sale systems are being compromised. We use one credit card that, if compromised, we've accepted the risk with that one. So we use it online. We use it at gas stations now, or whatever. We don't use debit cards anymore. We're done with debit cards. The only time we use a debit card is in our ATM.
And why is that?
It's harder if your debit card, if the cash it's harder to get cash back than to get credit.
So it's harder to get protection, or if someone has committed fraud against you, it's harder to get yourself protected from it.
Yeah.
Whereas like you're guilty until proven innocent versus innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, in a sense, right. So the banks so when cash is out of your account, it's gone. Whereas credit, you can dispute it. You don't have to make the payment. You're not any more cash. If I see fraudulent credit used on my credit card, fraudulent charges, I can dispute that and not pay it. I'm not out any more of the cash. But if somebody gets a hold of my debit card and the cash starts flowing out, it's harder to get that back.
Because the credit card provider essentially is a layer between you and the person committing the fraud. They're exposing themselves to the outflow of funds, but you have a step of indirect.
Exactly. Right. So, yeah, we don't use our debit card hardly for anything anymore. We certainly don't use it and point of sale systems being cash registers, ATMs, things of that nature. I certainly wouldn't use a debit card anywhere near any of those systems anymore. We use credit card, and we have one specific credit card that we use for that. We try vanilla cards when we go shopping. And I will have friends that they live in different parts of the country. I'll send them, or if we travel, we like to travel, and in different cities, every so often I'll use cash because they try to trace back where this was purchased from, where that vanilla card was purchased from. So if we travel to Nashville or we travel to Detroit or I'll buy vanilla cards from there as well, so that I don't have the same point, the sale of cards from the same store or the same area.
Now, what additional steps should a family take when they want to protect their sensitive personal information online?
There's a lot of things. And again, we're going to keep going back to what is your level of risk. And it gets harder, especially if you have children in the house, right? It gets harder. So if it's shopping online, there's a lot of things that I can control, and we just talked about those. When you're talking about general use activities, right, that's where it becomes much more difficult depending on the age of the children, how many children you have, and how active they are, and the devices that they're using, right? So if you're talking online in your home, it's a little easier to control. You know, the first thing we've always did with our kids growing up, and I've got 2 kids that are out of the house, and we're still friends with them on Facebook, right? But they've just kind of come accustomed to that, and kids do. That was always a rule. If you're going to get online, these are the sites you're allowed to use, right? You tell me what's hot, and then we'll go at time all the way back when MySpace was the one. So I've been on MySpace, I've been on Twitter, I've been on Facebook, I'm on a different one on Instagram to friend the kids, and then we'd say, okay, that's too many. You got to parse it down, right? This is just way out of control. You can do all these things. There's no reason you need to be on Instagram and all these posting pictures from that.
So on those, what expectation were you setting with them on each of those sites, that you would be able to befriend with them so that you could have the transparency of their activities?
Exactly. So one, I want to ensure that they weren't giving away anything that I was trying to protect. Kids are real good at getting on and saying, here's where I am, and they're going here, and we're going to go here, and we're going to do that. And so immediately, if you're trying to protect where your home information is, the kids are real good at giving that away, right? Because my daughter first came in, we'd say, just put that you're from Sao Paulo or somewhere Brazil, right? Just tell them you're not even from this country on that. Well, then that doesn't work, because if she posts a picture, and either two things are going to happen. She's posting a picture with her school logo on the front, and somebody can Google the school logo, or she does it from her mobile device with location services turned on. So we just defeated, that type of thing. So that's where it gets increasingly hard to do that. So the best thing you can do is continue to educate your kids on be careful what you're posting online, and be careful who you're friending. So we've made real strict controls on who you could friend while they're growing. As they got older, it gets harder to do, right? And actually, the kids bask us in technical savvy on these things. They really do. But if you educate them, say, look, if you're going to post, if there's something that's intended to be personal here, then you can set Facebook, for all its flaws, does have good security controls you can use in that. You can turn off location services. You can exclude certain people or include only these people on this picture, this post, things like that. And the kids actually do. I know mine in my house and their friends actually do seem to be all right with doing that. It's usually, as long as you don't say no with the kids, let's just do it a different way. They're all right with it. But it gets increasingly difficult, the privacy, especially with mobile devices. Mobile devices are really difficult to control.
What makes that especially hard?
Well, the location services on that, right? First of all, if you're posting just a simple post, it doesn't even have to be, I'm not even checking in from anywhere. You're going to post a picture. Hey, I thought this was cool. You're at the zoo. And if the location services are on, it's going to say, so-and-so just posted a picture of this polar bear at the zoo, and it's going to give the city from this area, and it's going to give the city and state in the bottom one, and it's in not being cognizant of that. So location services are the big one. Kids, people love to check in from wherever, right? They love to, I'm with so-and-so, and I'm with 18 other friends at Chipotle on whatever, and then they check in from there. And then, so if if you're looking to protect your family's privacy, to what degree, and then you're friends with them, and it becomes easy to associate. I can see you, I can see your kids, I get a general idea where you're at, I get an idea where your kids go to school. I can probably glean off this either on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. In a couple hours, I got a real good idea who you are, where you're at, and that gives me a start. That's a footprint that we've put out there for people to say, if I'm really interested, if I'm targeting you, I can do that, right? Again, the beginning of the conversation is how do we protect ourselves from becoming victims of opportunity? That's a big one, right? And so it's risk appetite. You could always tell your kids you can't get on. You're not going to be parent of the year with that, right? You can say you can't get on Facebook, you can't do that. I don't know how well that's going to go over in anybody's house. Some may do that and get away with it, and that's fine. And others, in my house, it wouldn't have sat really well, right?
Are there any other safeguards that you advise to people if they want to protect their family's information security?
Yeah, so there's a lot of general things, right, that people I just don't think that pay attention to, right? So one of the things are shipping. When you put your shipping address, we registered for a PO box. So when we enter in a site, we did register for PO box. The problem with that is, like using the vanilla cards, not everybody ships to a PO box. Right? So then your wife is in, or daughter, or whoever's purchasing, even you are in a decision. Do I really want that? If so, then I got to use a different credit card, or I've got to put my home shipping address in this, or I don't care, I didn't want it that bad, and you got to be able to walk away from it, or I need to go to the store and buy it. So
I don't know if this would apply exactly to this, but it might if we're clever. I know when purchasing surprise birthday gifts or something in the past, I made a deal with a neighbor, whatever. Right. I'm gonna have it shipped to your place, and that way nobody will find out about it in my house until the big day comes or whatever. Yeah. And I'm not sure if that makes sense. I haven't thought that through in fully, but it may make sense to do some of that swapping with friends. So.
Yeah, and that's not bad to do that. But keep the shipping address. Again, there's a lot of things in what you have to look for. Again, if you're using your credit card, you have to put your personal home information in that because that's how they associate the billing address with the credit card, and that's how they validate it, right? But the shipping address can be different. We've done that. The PO box just to have a different, just a different one. We do not put our home information in any of our GPS navigation systems in the event of a lost phone, a lost Garmin, in the one in the cars if the car gets stolen, or if you're using a valet service, right? We don't want anybody to be able to go in and go, "What's your home address?" Right? So we do not put our home. If we travel, once we get to the general area of where we live, we know how to get home. We don't need our exact home address. I need to just get within 50 miles of home, and I'm pretty sure I can make it from there, right? So if you're traveling across country using car, things like that, don't put your home address. You have no need to do that, right? Because there is no need.
That's a very good point. We were even shocked in purchasing a GPS a year or so ago that it made up its mind where our home address was. It must have been where we had first initialized it or something. We never put it in there, but it says go home. On the home feature, we had never put our home address in there, but I thought it knew. So that might be a good tip is when getting a new GPS or whatever, either to turn it on for the first time, not in your home or whatever, so that you can get close enough that you know how to get there.
Exactly, yeah. If you have the dealer do it, and then it registers that as the default one to the dealer where you purchase it, or if you buy a mobile one, a Garmin or something like that, then you do it wherever you purchased that. But yeah, the point's all the same. Don't do it at your home. Don't do it near your home. Don't need to do it in the neighborhood. Do it somewhere where it's away, where it doesn't get you, get that. Credit report. Checking credit reports is critical, right? For identity theft, things like that, understanding your credit report. And I would make periodic. It used to be annual. We do them quarterly. I think for me, I do them quarterly. It's worth whatever it costs. I get one free one a year. and then I purchase the other 2 or 3 if I do it every 3 to 4 months, just to make sure there's nothing. I think, to me personally, over the course of the year, I can't tell what is out of whack necessarily. There's things going on there, and nor do I have the patience to wait a year to identify if something went wrong. So I would recommend a couple times a year. I do it 3 to 4 times a year. I just kind of purchase Experian, different ones, to take a look at the credit report to make sure things are all in line, that nobody's opening an account in your name, any sort of line of credit, second loan, home loan, credit cards that you may not know about until you get the bills to your house.
Yeah, we had actually, I was fairly impressed recently. We had put because we had suspected there might have been fraud about a half a year ago, we had put a freeze on all of the 3 major credit bureaus on our credit report. And frankly, it had gone kind of out of sight, out of mind for a while until I was applying for a line of credit recently, and it was denied. And the reason was because the freeze was in effect and they couldn't pull my credit. So I thought, wow, it's really working. And until I came up with the right credentials and everything to lift the freeze, it wasn't able to move forward no matter how hard I wanted it to. So that to me, that was reassuring, actually, that there's ways around that. So.
Absolutely. Other things that we do, I always question anybody who needs my Social Security number. Why? A question, is there any other form of authentication or identification they can take? Even if they'll just take the last 4 digits. I try whatever I can do not to give out my whole Social Security, because that's the pot of gold right there, right? That's your tax ID, your Social Security number. Once whatever ties you with you, and the Social Security one's a big one. If I can get your name, mailing address is easy to get. Anybody can get mailing address anywhere, right? But if I can get your name, a mailing address, and your Social Security number, Social Security numbers are that's the one. So that's what you really want to protect. It's increasingly hard to do again. Also, I will no longer use credit cards that use the paper machines. If we're in a store, recently my wife did real good. She was at one. She had to make a purchase. Their electronic was down, so they brought out the old slide machine, right? That they do that, and she got real big, like, I don't think my husband's going to appreciate this. And what she did is she had to make the purchase, but she walked with the manager because they were just going to put it and leave it on the counter where everybody's walking by, and that's what they were doing. And she said, in order to make this purchase, we're going to walk this upstairs to your department so it's not sitting out in the open, and then tell me how you're going to destroy this, because my husband's going to ask how you can destroy it. Now, whether we didn't validate that, we didn't verify that, but at least it wasn't sitting out in the counter where everybody's walking by in a department store like that, and anybody can just pick up a pile of credit card, carbon copy of credit card numbers.
Right. In our previous town, even at the U.S. Post Office that was serving our town, when you were going to put it out of hold mail request so that they wouldn't deliver mail, it was just an open tray sitting on an unattended counter there where you drop your request card in for anybody who wanted to know what dates you're going to be out of town. And we would always insist that no, we're going to ring the bell until a person comes and takes us back to where only our carrier is going to see this, and not everybody else who walks by. So
absolutely, and that just goes with recognizing the risks. The risks are out there; they're very real. I mean, we've said it a couple times. It seems every day. Every day something's coming out. Identity theft, credit card breach, banking breach. It's very big business now, and we need to recognize that the threat's very real for everybody. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I think it was just 2 weeks ago that 1.2 billion passwords had been compromised over across 420,000 websites. That's quite an effort. It's quite an undertaking to do. So people are putting the time and effort in there because the returns are very real. Right? And so we're a part of those returns. We just need to make sure we recognize the risks and just bring about awareness. Again, there is no perfect privacy. There's no perfect security. I just don't want to be a victim of opportunity, and I want to minimize that. I want to minimize the opportunity of becoming that victim, and I want to minimize any sort of fallout should I become one of those victims, right? And you just take the credit card we use online, it has a specific line. It can't go over $2,000. So should I take a hit, I'm not going to be happy about it, but it's not going to devastate my family.
You've limited your exposure there.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I wanted, before we got done, to visit an area that's new, I think, to most people, and that's the Internet of Things. When we installed a printer in our home recently and also a television in our home, I was taken aback that they both wanted to know the password for my house's wireless network.
Sure.
I had to opt out of whether or not they were going to be in contact with with the company in the backside, telling them
Mm-hmm.
and the printer was going to keep me informed with when reordering ink for me whenever it thought that I needed ink from the back office. The television, I had the same thing. It wanted to know what our home network was. It wanted to know, and I don't recall exactly what the information was planning on sending back to the parent company of our viewing habits or whatever, and I had to opt out of that specifically. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. What I'm being told is that in the next few years, numerous appliances and everything else within the home are all going to be internet enabled, and the promise that always comes with these kind of things is convenience and control and visibility. How people can have remote, they'll wake up and the coffee will already be brewing and the house will be smart and it'll be all taken care of them. And how nice to have these tireless servants taking care of you. And then when you're away from home, you can have visibility of what's going on in your home and the convenience and the control. And with that, back to these daily breaches that we hear about. It reminds me of how you see all these ads for the new wonder drug, and then the next ad is on about how if you got injured by last year's wonder drug, you can come in to help you. So I'm having this eerie feeling like we've been here before, and now if our homes are going to start to be just chock full of these smart devices that are all connected, and they're connected not just to us, but they're potentially accessible to back to their manufacturer or other information on the internet. Is there anything people should be thinking forward about how to reduce their exposure to unwanted amount of intrusion, if the trade-offs that they can make there, to have a sense that this isn't happening? People have a way of controlling the amount to which they want to take that risk.
Sure. So that's a great question, right? Because we just about 6 months ago in our house, we had the discussion of smart TV. Hey, let's take a look at smart TVs. And then we started taking a look at it, and we went through kind of the same process you did when looking and asking the questions, go, smart TV, what was your experience with your, and we hearing the same thing. We're going to connect here, you can do this, and when you hook this up, and I started hearing the same thing going, well, gosh, I got to enter a lot of things just to get my smart TV to work. Why do I want a smart TV? Then it became the question asked, what do we really want a smart TV for? Is it really going to enhance the experience we're going to want to do? And that's going to be the same thing. Do I really want a refrigerator that's going to order for me at the grocery store? Do I want, so it goes back to, again, what do you want? What do you want? And what are you willing to accept, right? What is acceptable to you? I mean, there are some of this is actually pretty cool, right? There are some cool things out there. Technology is very cool. But at the same time, it does impose a lot of risks that you're talking about with the Internet of Things. Everything's becoming, but it happens when you're online. Not only you talk about, I have to enter all this information just to get a printer hooked up. I've got it. It wants my email address, really? So it's a wireless printer, so I get that you're going to want to connect to my wireless network. I understand that, right? I've already configured a wireless for you. You get on that one. But why do you need my email address, right? Why do you want to? Because why? So then you start researching, doing it. It's as simple as installing an application on your computer that's going to put a browser or a search bar on your thing. It's the same thing. And people just go by, click, 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 go ahead. I just want it installed. And before you know it, you've got all these background things that you didn't intend to happen. And so the same thing is happening with the Internet of Things, right? We need to start paying attention with, what are we installing all the way along the way? I need to read every step along the way now, because marketers, for the printer, I'm reducing the cost of the printer to you by getting this other stuff enabled with it, right? I do the same thing on a computer. How many times have you gotten a computer from somewhere, Circuit City, Best Buy, or wherever you bought it, and it's got all this garbage on it. As soon as the first thing you do is power it up and take off a whole bunch of stuff from it, right? And so that's the same concept of buying a computer. When you buy anything that's going to be internet enabled, it's going to have a bunch of garbage on there, because that's how they're using it for marketing and keeping costs down to you, and really it becomes a nuisance that we're going to have to pay attention to. That has a very real potential of putting stuff out there that we never intended, right? And what does it open us up to the network? And not only that, just innocently, if you're talking from malicious, that means if it's connecting the internet, it's susceptible to malware, right? And so we need to understand, how many devices am I really, because each device that I connect to the internet is another vector of infection to my home network. Right?
It's an opportunity for vulnerability.
Yep, absolutely. And the problem is we're coming with computers. I'm familiar with computers. I know how to protect my computer. I don't know how to protect my refrigerator.
Exactly.
Right? I have no idea. I can't scan my refrigerator to see if it's infected. I can't do that necessarily. I don't know necessarily my printer or whatever that may be also connecting to the internet. And so there's the fear of that unknown kind of makes me hesitant in going out and just leaping out there. If I can't wrap the protection that I think we need around it, then I'm not going to do it. right? And so giving up on certain luxuries, quote unquote, right, on a speaker. But yeah, that's a definite concern for everybody. As we had everything. You're right. I think what they say 2020, the amount of things that were going to be internet based in your home is going to be mind boggling, right? Just everyday things we use now.
And we're in this period right now where you actually do have the choice of buying the old form. You can buy a not smartphone, mobile phone, or you can buy a not smart TV and that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens if that era gets to where those options are no longer commercially out there.
Right.
All the ones on the shelf are the ones that are all smart. Then we'll have to talk, more. Circle back and talk again about
Sure.
how you protect yourself in that world.
Yeah, it's called compensating controls, and right, what controls I can put around to compensate for the risk that's out there.
Well, Matthew Perry, before we let you go, any final thoughts for our viewers on in protecting their families' identities, their information, their security?
No, the biggest thing that we always tell the kids, just pay attention. Just you really need to pay attention. What are you doing? You don't need to be super hyper vigilant. That's good, but you do need to be aware. Just pay attention to what's going on. What are they asking, and what are you giving up? Understand that your information is money. And that's a big deal.
Once again, Matthew Perry, information security expert, thank you for joining us on Reluctant Preppers.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.